For sure. So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Clay Garner. I'm a public interest hacker, for lack of better words. I was the former chief innovation officer to the mayor of San Jose, which, if you can believe it, is the 10th largest city in America. Worked on everything from community Wi-Fi build outs to trying to think about the future of transportation, how we're going to integrate things like autonomous vehicles, public safety tech. So, really exciting time, especially given the pandemic. Like we have to pretty much all of the digitization work that had been planned for many years in the span of just a few weeks and months. So that was a very exciting time to be at City Hall. Before that was at Google, studied in China, looking at public-private partnerships as a Stephen Schwarzman scholar. And I just had to say that I have so many agreements with Ed on his points. What excites me, I think AI, as a young person in the Bay Area, is just a renaissance right now in San Francisco. There's just no other place on earth which co-location of the talents and the companies that you see there. I mean, one of my classmates from school is the product manager on Dolly, and she's 26 years old. And you just see that across the board. People are starting companies and building these products that are basically transforming how we interact with tech. So that's super exciting. As a local politics guy, I mean, it's exciting that that's happening here. I think, it depends to be seen whether the government can actually figure out how to leverage this excitement and renaissance to avoid what some analysts describe as a doom loop scenario, which seems very likely, I think, in some parts of this area. To Ed's point, it's not just the corporate cultural model that will suffer from work from home, but it's the whole system is just collapsing. We built a society around these tech commuter campuses, and if people don't show up to work, then we don't have the small business impact. We don't have transit revenue. I mean, our transit systems here are among the most reliant in the United States on fare collection. It's like 70% for BART prior to the pandemic. So if it's only 40% of pre-pandemic ridership and that doesn't increase, what are we going to do about our transit? Because federal funding is only going to last till 2025. So our whole system has to be dynamically updated to meet the reality of this work from home environment for whatever purpose that may serve. So I think that's a huge challenge. I think, you can do a startup now with way less people. I mean, Meta is firing tons of recruiters and marketers and these people that had good jobs that lived here, got mortgages. And what do you do if you're a marketing person now? I mean, that is a white collar job that was supposed to be a path to middle class or even upper middle class. I mean, if you use ChatGPT or use any of these tools like Canva, it's pretty hard to believe that we're going to need as many people to do these tasks. And so a lot of people will say, well, with productivity gains, there's always just some kind of, alternate pool of labor that emerges and there's new opportunities. But I think it's hard to see that. I mean, maybe you've been following Auto GPT and the agents emerging for how basically AI systems can interact with each other. So where do people fit into this mix? I don't think anyone's really thinking about that, and that's very scary.
Yeah, I'm Anurag Chandra. I wear two hats. I think right now Mark has me wearing my LP hat, but I've been a GP for the last 20 years in Silicon Valley across a few venture firms, about at least $2.5 billion under management, might be a little higher than that. And I've been around to see the NASDAQ bubble burst. I've seen the great financial crisis and what we're going through now. And every time I hear someone like Ed talk, I think maybe I will stay in Silicon Valley, because there are a lot of days where I get sick of how much, since the great financial crisis, this place has become the worst of New York and Los Angeles. It's the transactional nature of New York, and it's the me, I want to be famous of Hollywood. But then maybe once or twice a week, real entrepreneurs, which is the old school entrepreneurs, just two geeks who actually have a product that they think will solve a problem, and they want to fit that product into this white space, and they just don't know exactly how. They show up, and I think, okay, I'm going to live here a little bit longer, because it's hard to separate the signal from the noise. It's a lot of MBAs and a lot of soft skilled people starting companies without a real passion for a product. And I think what concerns me the most about Silicon Valley is this thing that excites me. What concerns me is that we're going to continue to be a destination for tourists. They leave when this happens right now. But then there's enough critical mass here, and the Valley still has a lot of core strengths I'll be a little shameless, but there is no 1-2 punch like Princeton and Stanford anywhere in the world. No offense to Harvard and MIT, but it's a significant head and shoulder less in terms of breaking glass, dynamism, and the entrepreneurship. I think the venture capitalists like living here. It's a pretty good quality of life, so I don't see the capital evaporating anytime soon. So I'm long-term optimistic because I've been through 2 of these before. The Valley seems to find its way. I do think that right now AI is full of promise, but it's one of 5 platform technologies that I think can be as big as the internet was in terms of generating wealth. Interesting to see that you can do something in space tech. I think it's underrepresented as a
What are the other 4?
I have to remember them now. So space tech, I don't even have AI. AI is there, but it's not one of mine. Autonomy, computational biology, which my father, who was a medical school professor at NYU, to his chagrin, neither of his kids know anything about biology. What else do I have on there? I'm still long blockchain. My younger son owns crypto. He thought he was such a genius in high school, and I think he's learned a valuable lesson about investing. But I am bullish on blockchain. I've seen some really interesting applications in the fintech world, just back office stuff, just rationalizing all of the transactions that companies make, intercompany transactions, the way you balance your balance sheets with your subsidiaries, tokenizing all of that is really powerful. And it's massive cost savings. So how many am I up to?
But do you think the Valley has an edge on all 5?
Yeah, I mean, look, anything life sciences, San Diego and Boston are highly relevant. But I think, yeah, they either an edge or competitive in all of them is what I would say. Yeah, so I'm still, still bullish. But I do think the one other thing that worries me is a dirty little secret: VCs don't make money for their investors. They don't make money that matters for their investors. And I don't know when the LPs are actually going to 100% figure this out. Having said that, we have an allocation at San Jose in venture, and I'm committed to that allocation. We make that decision as trustees. I chair the investment committee. I don't get to do it by myself. It's by consensus, and the CIO is long venture because innovation is one of the 2 or 3 themes where I think you can get alpha over the next 10 or 15 years. It's figuring out how to play innovation. Venture is a subset of innovation. We think because we're in San Jose and because we have trustees like me and a few others who have been practitioners that we might be able to do a better job of picking the right type of venture funds, but they've gotten way too big. They all mark their portfolios based on marked up valuations, right? I'm a lawyer too, so only 11 months, hated every minute of it, round peg in a square hole. And I had to learn corporate finance on my own. A buddy of mine at HBS told me the gospel textbook. It's on my bookshelf still, probably 5 editions old. I thought IRRs were calculations of cash flow. When you look at venture distributions, you don't start to see returns until year 7 or 8, but you don't really see the bulk of the cash till years 10 through 16. And if you're going to tell me 2 to 3x, which is what every firm advertises, is how I can get you 2 or 3x in 16 years, in 15 years, it's a poor IRR. I'm better off investing in tech in the public markets. So I'm wearing my LP hat right now. My GP friends hate when I do that. When I take it off and I'm a GP, I can tell you why I'll make you money. But I'll never work at $1 billion plus venture fund. So
how do you segue to that, Sapa?
He's doing it the right way.
That's why I'm here. Now, I think Anwar has said an important point about venture as an asset class. I believe that we are, as an asset class, in the middle of a growing up or coming of age, both GPs as well as the LPs and investors, because it is an asset class that behaves like nothing else out there. Certainly not like public equities, not like credit, not like structured products or anything else. It is one that you have to obviously wait for 10 years, and you have to be lucky to have that big win at the end of it. And if you don't have that big win, you will get mediocre results from the best firms. and certainly poor results from not so good firms. But I think that's part of the entire process that we're going through. I mean, you've noticed that maybe except Ron Rock, most of us up to now, I haven't spoken yet, have been a little bit defensive. We're trying to say, hey, things aren't that bad. So that actually defines the mood in Silicon Valley. So let's just accept it that we are under a microscope. We are feeling the heat that Silicon Valley is not quite leading yet. And I think it's a confluence of several factors in the past 5 years. COVID can't be underestimated. And I think Clay put it really well in terms of the impact that it has had on campuses and in terms of impact it has on corporate culture. And it had the biggest impact, I think, among major cities in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Even after the opening, I remember I visited a friend in Boston, and that was about 2 years ago, almost 1.5 years ago. And downtown was kind of humming, coming together. At that time, San Francisco was still a ghost town. So it really had much deeper impact here for some reason. Second, along with that came the correction in the capital markets that obviously hit us very, very hard because we have very highly valued companies, both public and private. So it kind of impacts both the employees' compensations, their stock holdings, as well as how the LPs and GPs see the potential value coming here. So it kind of put everything on a damper. And I would say third is just in terms of technology cycles, we have been in the middle of a cycle. If you think about it, over the past 5 years, we really haven't had a consequential company coming out of Silicon Valley. Maybe the last one was Databricks and Snowflakes. But after that, we haven't had anything. The most consequential company in the tech world today came from China, and it's TikTok that's changing the world. So we're trying to kind of figure out what's next. And I think that AI and certainly this packaging within the ChatGPT part of AI couldn't come in a better place because in some ways it would be the savior. It is giving everyone new energy and it's giving real tools. The risk and the danger from my view is that it is also overhyped. If you talk to people who are in the know and if you talk to real AI experts, they say that this is not a revolution, it's an evolution. It has been happening. We have been using AI for the past 10, certainly 5 years very effectively. At best, this was an inflection point, but it was one that was packaged in a way that would grab attention and grab the awe of people and get 100 million people to use it within a few months. That's great, and I think it does have great potential, but it does risk the fact that many companies will come and attach an AI or a ChatGPT to the end of their names and try to raise twice as much as what they need at 4 times the valuation that they deserve, and we're already seeing that. So, but this is a game we play here. We go fast, we hit the ball, and then we kind of say, okay, what was that hit us? And then we kind of go back and try to reflect and try to be cool. But I do think AI as a new set of tools is very important. If Andreessen says software eats the world, I think I would say AI is eating the software and it's going to generate new software. But just wait for it. Don't expect the world to change in the next year just because of ChatGPT.
So, keep asking questions, but our modus operandi to interact. So, comments, questions? Mike, comment?
So we actually see a lot of companies in the Valley now.
Can you just announce who you are?
I'm Eugene Malbosky, I'm a partner at One Way Ventures. And now the Silicon Valley is changing again, where work from home is starting to be more limited. Google, Apple just announced, and pretty much every big corporation is saying that's it. We're going back to hybrid workplace. That are basically making people go to the office 3 to 4 times a week. And so it's going back to where it started to some extent. Yes, we're most likely going to have not 5 days a week in the office, but I don't think we're going to keep working from home, at least the companies. And the most innovation, if you see in companies that's happening, are the people who said, work from home was great, but we're actually more effective at the office. Because we can actually create products faster, iterate faster, create new features faster. when everybody's in the same place. So just a comment.
Because we talked about, the university, the assets that this valley has, and the largest of it's the universities we have. We have Berkeley, we have Stanford, we also have Santa Clara, we have San Jose State. We realize that the largest number of engineers at Apple come from San Jose State. The same thing is true of Google. And it's something just to recognize that, yeah, you've got they're creative people come out of San Jose State. I'm a San Jose State grad myself. Whether I'm creative is another question. But there are creative people who come out of San Jose State. But in terms of getting your engineers, product managers, business managers, all those kinds of people, the bulk come from a public university. And the challenge is getting the state and philanthropy to realize that, because public universities are no longer supported like they were when I went to San Jose State. It was $57 a semester. Now it's $7,000 a year, so which is well ahead of inflation, not counting the cost of living. But I think the philanthropic and state support for public universities, not only San Jose State, but you've got East Bay, you've got in San Francisco State, you've got all the UC system need financial support from philanthropy and from the state. And with people running around bad mouthing university education, it seems to be Jordan Will's column today was basically saying who needs a bachelor's degree doesn't help. But anyway, I think that's an asset class that we undervalue in the valley. Why we're so successful, starting with Lockheed moving here, Missiles in Space in 1959. They moved here because of Berkeley and because of San Jose State and because of Stanford. Why and
They're the ones that need an office.
Water cooler.
Yeah.
I mean, on the return to work piece, like there was an interesting battle at the city or in the mayor's office between, I think, a lot of the Gen Zers and some of the older staffers, because we're looking at the data and like we accomplished all of our climate goals basically during the pandemic. Like we had just people off the roads. I mean, like all of the climate goals
China
investing in, and it's like young people were like, "Oh, how can we go back? Because you're telling us that, whether it's more effective or not, but because we have to be around the water." Like that was, and I don't know to what extent that will influence all these companies that are being created now, but is there really that same desire? Possibly. I mean, I do think in person is a lot more effective for teams, but the climate goals that people purport to have and that people are spending a lot of money on can be accomplished very easily by remote work. So it's kind of a giant contradiction.
But it's not just working together with others in the same office. It's actually being out there. We used to have an office on near University Avenue, Palo Alto, and we paid a little bit more, but I actually wanted to have an office there. And we shared with other smaller VCs. We actually hosted some Stanford startups, gave them some space. But one reason that I like to be there is because when I would walk down University Avenue, I would see that CFO I knew from Google. I would see the other person who just left Palantir. I would hear the chat of people talking about it. I mean, I know this is going to sound weird and stupid maybe, but it was almost like it was in the air. And I would sometimes even take a walk during lunchtime and just go around several blocks and clear my thoughts if I'm thinking about a new investment or something else. So I think for Silicon Valley, you asked if Silicon Valley has an advantage in these things. It's not the only place that we will have innovation from. And I think we will see more of what we have seen from New York, Boston, London, Berlin, certainly China and India. But Silicon Valley certainly has the university advantage. It does have the people, there's so many technical and different people here, but also it has huge companies that give tremendous number of people as their alums to start new companies. This was a factor for LA. I remember there was a discussion about how do we build something like Silicon Valley, and they didn't quite have the critical mass of companies like Google and Facebook and Yahoo at that time to create it. And I would add a fourth factor, which is some competitive culture that's out here. When I go down to Southern California and have friends there, I'm Persian. I joke that every Persian has a cousin in Southern California. So when you go there,
Actually, I've been around the world. You have a Persian cousin everywhere.
when you go there, it's just more laid back. I mean, I don't mean to put it in a negative way, but there is something about the culture that's hard to recreate. You can recreate great universities, you can have great companies, but the culture is harder to recreate.
Can I just pick up on, so there's another lever, which is we are on Entrepreneur 4.0 in Silicon Valley. We have a representative 1.0, and shame on us for not pointing that out earlier.
Yeah.
There is so much knowledge transfer at breakfast and so many 1.0 and 2.0 founders who spend you want to talk about philanthropy. The number of founders I know who just meet with young entrepreneurs just to pay it forward. That does not happen in Los Angeles. That does not happen in Miami. That does not happen in New York. And I'm going to pick on Miami for a second because when I was at my first venture fund, and I wanted to bring a deal from Florida to the partnership, and my partner in Boston said, "Don't ever bring a deal from Florida to the partnership." Said, "I will just vote no based on its location." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "The most SEC violations per capita, and no one moved to Florida for a partner."
Anyone from Florida?
So I think that the amount of critical mass that Safa was referring to is.
Well, let's talk about we just came from, we've been talking about China constantly too. And you're used to be think about the kind of, their innovation is done differently, but they're just throwing the kitchen sink and everything at it. And, whether it's quantum fusion, 100 billion into some of these industries. Now we have space. So how do you see either maybe it's the US, but more broadly vis-a-vis what's happening in these global, there's silo blocks are forming. And how do you see the US and the Silicon Valley's role in all that vis-a-vis China?
I don't think we could do it on our own. I think we should do something like we did with the space station, or something like what Europeans did with the Boeing competitor, Airbus. I think what you're referring to is a real and emerging global trend that not only we are now seeing, again, two superpowers at conflict with each other, but technologically, China is going to throw a lot into that. Because I was in China in the past 20 years or so, and I saw how their approach was something that we never do in the West, which is let's build it and they'll come. And it worked for them. They built massive infrastructures, and I think for the 10 or 15 years I was watching China and going to China, every year they would say, this is the year that China is going to collapse. You can't possibly go on like this. And they did. So I think it's going to be another one of those attempts thrown into technology, quantum, into AI, into healthcare. And I don't think this is a battle that we at Silicon Valley or the US can just win alone. I think it has to be a collaboration in the West as a whole.
I think in some ways it's a competition, in some ways it's collaboration, in some ways it's none of the above, because I'm excited about innovation in Austin or in Ohio, just as I am in Bangalore. And now I can't access China, so I don't really think about it much day to day. For San Jose, we try to access it for the pension plan, but from an innovation point of view, I guess I would consider TikTok a bit of a cheat, but I still think I'm accurate in saying there are no big global Chinese companies. There are big Chinese companies in China. One of the things that makes India interesting, because that's the flavor of the month, is that India can build and will build global companies because it's structurally different. But if China's innovating, it's going to leak. I mean, it's not like companies in Silicon Valley aren't trying to copy TikTok in some way. And I think where the geopolitical meets technology, we have a decent framework in the US. It's unfortunate that both countries are inflaming tensions rhetorically. It's unnecessary. But CFIUS and some of the other things that we're doing, whether they're executed on well or not, that's a different issue. But we are trying to figure out which technologies we have to be careful about and that have military applications. So there's a lot of things that I think are complete greenfield, open field, and anyone who's innovating is going to make all the other innovators globally better.
Questions? So my family's background is in real estate, and we've been aware of kind of the 10-year plus or minus cycle of kind of boom and bust, right? And in Silicon Valley and tech, I think you've only been through a couple cycles of this so far, right? And so I guess my question around that is, A, do you think that that's a natural cycle that will continue to happen in this industry? And if so, is the doom and gloom over kind of overstated, and actually this is really a buying opportunity, right? Especially if you're able to apply strategies that can protect you. And so I'm kind of just curious to hear your opinions on this. And can you draw from and take any wisdom from other industries that have been around a lot longer?
What did you say? There was a bust in the 80s as well?
There was a bust in the mid-80s, about 86,
Yeah,
84, just before going public in 86. I think there's a natural cycle there. And in Silicon Valley, we have lots of entrepreneurs and optimists. And all we entrepreneurs are optimists. We plan for the best. We don't even think about what might happen if, like I said, you have the revenue curves going like this and your expense curves going like this. If the revenue curve turns down, you get red space in between there. People don't plan for revenue turning level or going down. Meanwhile, their expenses are, you hire somebody today, you're going to pay them for 10 years. So I think that because we're optimists, I think many companies tend to, overspend before they have the revenues, the resources to actually deal with what happens if it doesn't quite plan. That marketing projection you made that says, we're going to win the world in 2 years doesn't quite pan out, and that leads to bust. Because if Oracle has trouble, then all the companies that feed into Oracle have trouble. If Intel has trouble, all the companies that feed into it. So you wind up having, kind of a spreading contagion. And I think that doesn't help. When we have credit crises like we had in the 2000, when everyone got afraid because too many companies, there was a huge bubble. Oracle wasn't part of the bubble, but Oracle got clobbered anyway. Kind of thing. When we have credit crisis like we had 2008, and we're just trying to pull out of now, I can't borrow money. It's what's the best investment right now? Well, probably 3-month T-bills. So why would you invest in a company that might lose it all tomorrow? So I can get 5% every 3 months until that stops. So T-bill, the rising interest rates is causing a problem because companies can't expand the same way that they used to, and it fails some banks and a few other things. So I think it's a natural cycle due to optimism.
Ashley, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks for all as an LP, what are like the red flags around VCs that you look at, and how do you do VC ready?
My personal opinion is smaller funds versus bigger funds.
Second.
I know his performance track record. I think it'd be hard for one of the name brand Sandhill Roads. I won't name one, but I can think of several. They're just not going to provide. I mean, if you have a $2 or $3 billion fund, and you're going to own 15% of your company. Let's say you're just buying lottery tickets, right? And you own 15% of each lottery ticket because you're in a syndicate with everyone. 15 might even be high. I mean, you have to have like 100 billion in exits in some of these funds to give me a return that I'm happy with. And I just don't understand why more LPs don't do that math. I love that innovation is funded. I don't want that to cease. But I have a bias towards smaller funds. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is the CFA's background is not well suited to being able to evaluate most private asset classes. I think pattern matching and experiencing, knowing something about operations is incredibly valuable. In fact, I'd say it's essential. There are things like operational arbitrage that you need to know. Why is someone doing something in a way that's going to give them a competitive advantage? You don't have to do that when you're evaluating public securities. Right? So I think that skill set is important. I think a team with a person, I wouldn't want to do this as a GP where I'm just only in one of those 5 themes, because if I pick wrong, I spent a decade of my life and it's not remunerative. But as an LP, I love having my autonomy fund, having my blockchain fund, my computational, where the people have deep expertise. I've been a generalist my career, so full disclosure. But I think there's something to be said for that. I think avoiding, for us as San Jose, we won't do first-time managers. We don't have a staff that's skilled in that way, although we have an unbelievable staff, and our performance over the past 3 years has been unbelievable, and I give them all the credit for it. This is not a skill set they have. So I think those qualitative things matter a lot, and then knowing what sector bets you want to make and then staying small, in a team that's aligned with you, right? I mean, alignment, when firms become asset managers, I think you lose alignment with your LP, no matter what you're doing, whether it's real estate or hedge funds or venture.
Come join our 361 firm community of investors and thought leaders. We have a lot of events created by the community as we collaborate on investments and philanthropic interests. Join us.